discuss about the inflation and its regulating methods. Usually the regulation of inflation comes under the monetary policy, and we know that in India the monetary policy is regulated by Reserve Bank of India, the Central Bank of India. Not only in India, usually the monetary policy of any country will be regulated by central banks, unless otherwise that particular government will follow another method. Usually in the past the monetary regulation was under the direct control of the governments, but J.M. Keynes advised almost all the countries that if you are giving the authority to issue the notes to one department, and if you are trying to control the monetary of that particular currency in your country, that is giving the power to two different departments, concentration of power between two, leading to complexities. Than that, you hand over the monitoring policy or monitoring power also to the central bank, so that will make it simple and only one authority can take over among the two issues. One is issuing the currency and the monetary of that currency. So here in inflation, in regulating methods which involves in the monetary policy, see, regulating methods are classified broadly here to let you understand it simply. That is issuing bonds, increasing the interest rates, auction of government securities. See, in these regulating methods, what is the objective of the regulating methods is, just before this class I gave you an example. That is, if you are having more availability of fund in your hands, so definitely you are going to spend it more. In the sense, when there is a good amount of fund available to you, you will spend it like anything. So if the availability of fund is reduced, you will attribute much value to the available small fund. So when you are attributing much value when the fund is in less, even though the amount of money is less, its value will be very much. So the objective of regulating methods in India is simply sucking the supply of money from the market into its account, into the government's account. So if the availability of money in the market, that is among the public, is reduced, then what happens? Since there is no availability of money or currency with the public, they are not going to spend much. So obviously what happens, when you are spending more as you like, so if there is a necessity of spending 200 bucks for a shirt, but when you are having huge money, you will even ready to pay 250 rupees or sometimes 300 rupees depending upon your wish, as well as depending upon the demand for that product. Even though there is a demand and wish, if you are able to regulate the spending, then you are having all the chances to control the inflation. So the objective of controlling the inflation in India is simply controlling the supply of money with the public. If the supply of money or if the availability of money with the public is reduced, they are not going to spend much, so they are not going to spend much on the good or a service or a commodity, and thus the cost or price of a good or a commodity can be regulated. So issuing bonds, usually the RBI will take care of this thing. It will issue the bonds on behalf of the respective governments. When a bond is issued, the value of that bond is taken from the one who is buying this bond from the government, and the money for that bond will be sucked from the market. So if the RBI is taking the money for issuing this bond from any person, means nothing but it's trying to bring out all the money from the market. It will try to issue more number of bonds when it wants to regulate the inflation much. And there will be different types of bonds. We will discuss about it later elaborately. Now when a bond is issued either through auction or through any other process, what happens? Usually that bonds will be of much cost, like some 1000 or 5000 crores or some 10,000 crores, whatever it may be. When a bond is of such high cost, what happens? some huge organizations, financial organizations or some commercial banks will buy that bonds. When a commercial bank is paying some 5,000 crores to buy a bond, because it will have a interest which is free from taxes. Remember, when a government bond is bought, the tax that is given, the interest that is given to you for buying that bond will be free from taxes. So what happens? Definitely the people run behind the bonds. Why? They will get a good amount of interest, that too from a secured authority, that is government. So no bother about your money, and the interest you are gaining is free from taxes. How many benefits? So what happens? Definitely the people and the market will run behind these bonds, and the market is simply sucked out from the money is simply sucked out from the market, and so the money supply among the public will come down. If a commercial bank spent nearly 5,000 crores in buying this bond, what happens? That particular bank will try to limit the issue of loans to the public. So availability of money to the public comes down, then spending will come down. Even though there is a demand for the good, artificially created or because of any means, since there is no availability of money, the people are not going to create a demand, or even though if there is a demand, the people are not going to spend on that particular good or a service. Obviously, one by one, the inflation comes down. Then, increasing the interest rates. See, there is a fellow who earns nearly some 70,000 per month. So usually all his spendings, including his rent, etc., everything, entertainment, will cope up to 30,000. Then he can save some 40,000 rupees. But if he is a fellow who wants to enjoy more and more comforts, what he will do? Even in that 40,000 also, he will spend some 20 or 25,000 for some luxury comforts. But if the banks are increasing the interest rates for youth also, who are getting a good amount of salary, if the banks announce that they are increasing the interest rates, definitely it will be some tempting to park your money with the bank. Usually it happens with aged fathers or aged elders who try to park their money with the bank, and so they can protect their money from expenses. Usually sometimes thinking about some necessity or for buying something, the people will withdraw the money from the bank. But if suddenly they are trying to buy some car, but if suddenly the government announced that the banks are increasing the interest rates on the directions given by again RBI. RBI will issue circular to increase the interest rates or to decrease the interest rates. So if the interest rates are increased, so you are getting much interest on the money you parked with the bank. So it will be tempting, okay, let us buy the car next time, let us go and park this money with the banks. Usually all the people will do the same. What happens? So the money in hands is coming down. Money is not in handy. Obviously spending will come down. When spending is coming down, again the same principle. Demand comes down, so prices will be coming down. The same principle here. Next, third one, auction of government securities. See, through public sector holdings, government will have some securities in the public sectors. Sometimes, even though the private partnership is given, the government will have some holding. Such securities will be sold, or they may be sold through an auction, or sometimes they will be mortgaged at some financial institution to bring out all the money from the market. See, auction to public. Okay, what happens? In the form of securities, an investment is transferred to the public, and in return from the public, money is taken by the government. Money supply is coming down in the market. Then, not auction, simply sold. Even then, the investment is transferred, the ownership is transferred, and again, money is coming from the market to the government. Next, let us think that the government securities are not sold, they are mortgaged at some financial institution. When the government securities are mortgaged at some financial institution, usually all those financial institutions also works as the financial institutions to the public. What a financing department will do regularly, a financial institution, they will try to issue loans, calling the people who are getting good amount of salary, and so by giving loans to a secured person, they will have some interest as profit. But when the government transfer that investment to a financial department, financial institution, and take money from that financial institution, the availability of fund with that financial institution comes down. Then it will not try to issue any more loans. It will limit itself in issuing the loans. So what happens again? The supply of money in the market through the loans issued by the financial institutions is coming down. So again, when the money supply in the market is down, spending will be down. Again, same principle, demand will be down, and the price of the commodities or goods or services will come down. Thus, the regulating measures in India are used by RBI on a broad way. This is the effect of inflation on the government as well as on the public. On government, how the inflation is going to show some effect? I explained you that if the inflation is up, the spending of the public will be more. So they demand more from the government to spend more in the form of salaries. So in order to give them more salaries, the government will go on doing more expenditure. Finally, there will be a change in its budgetary estimates. Because of inflation, it has to spend more, so its funds will be diminishing. The value of its funds will be diminishing. So there will be a reduction in the amount of money to the government. So it have to go and borrow the money from any other resource to manipulate itself, to adjust itself. That's about inflation.